Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2003's Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, the Game Boy Advance entry into the famous farming game franchise about life in a rural town and finding love amongst the turnips.
Following that is the roguelike action role-playing game that relies on the Greek pantheon during attempts to escape the Underworld and reach the surface. 2020's HADES. I would not have guessed that HADES and Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town have so many possible themes in common. I mean, first of all, there are possible relationships with NPCs. You got fishing. There's that. Can you pet your dog? I know you can hold your dog and show off your dog in Harvest Moon, but can you pet the dog?
It's implied that you pet the dog when you lift it up above your head and then you set it back down, a little heart appears, and I believe that is implied to be you petting the dog.
Okay, well look at that. You can pet Cerberus in Hades. So many similarities there, but yeah, very different games other than that. So Joe, if people listened to last week's episode, they know that we were recording this week's and last week's back-to-back, but we come from the future, or at least a week later than when we originally recorded this, to tell you of what is going on this week and be a little more modern and up-to-date. How are you doing? What are you playing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, look, a lot of stuff happened, and so we should probably talk about that stuff. But I have been slowly continuing Eye of the Somnium Files. So far, still interesting. I finished my climb up Gym Leader Castle in Pokemon Stadium 2 for Masterpieces, and been streaming more of the game that I'm talking about this week. So that's basically it. I've been on a buying spree of I bought 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, and I bought Persona 5 Strikers, and my roommate got a hold of a PS5, but I have not had a chance to play Astro's Playroom, which I'm very much looking forward to giving a shot. So, hey.
Very exciting for sure. I've just been playing more of the game I'm talking about this week. I played even more since we talked about it in this weird time vortex. I'm like 80 runs in, 60 hours in. I've been playing it a lot.
Damn, you've played it more than I have, and it was my game of the year.
Yeah, what can I say? I'm stuck in that rut still, but I may be going to continue Doom 2016 soon. So, fingers crossed on that. All right, yeah, we had to talk this week about the Composer follow-up news. So many headlines to talk about that it could not wait another week, and we had to travel back in time and mix time periods together. Let's talk about some of those headlines from the Composer that we've talked about. From all these different episodes, they're still doing great things in the industry. Let's start, though, with the continuing story of Red Candle Games. This is the team that we talked about when you brought Detention to the show, and we mentioned how Devotion, their next horror game, featured some possibly unflattering portrayals of Xi Jinping, the premier of China, and so there's a whole bunch of censorship and taking it down. Well, Red Candle Games is just like, we're going to self-publish. Like, here's our own eShop. We're selling Devotion and Detention, and we're also going to show you a little snippet of a work-in-progress side-scrolling game that we're working on. So good for them, honestly.
Yeah, I have put my money where my mouth is. I did go buy Devotion pretty much the day that this was announced, and I'm very, very happy that they're doing it. It's not quite what people were saying, like, somebody should tell Red Candle that itch.io exists, but I think this is the next best thing, and I am very excited to play Devotion, even though I have so many games I gotta play right now. Meanwhile, we got some Game Pass news, like a lot of Game Pass news. For instance, Undertale is now on Game Pass. We've talked about that, and its composer/developer Toby Fox in the past. Also, coming soon to console and PC Game Pass, you have Octopath Traveler. That'll be put on Game Pass on March 25th. And Nier Automata, which was originally only on console Game Pass, is now available on PC Game Pass. And apparently, some people are reporting that the Game Pass version is a better PC port than the Steam release.
That is certainly interesting. I mean, Octopath Traveler coming to Xbox as well before PlayStation? $30 too on the price, so I don't know, maybe Nintendo Switch version has to match that, but that's an odd one.
I was under the impression that Sony was like real tight with Square Enix, and I guess that Microsoft must have dumped a lot of money to get past that.
Must have, but hey, that's a good get for Game Pass, so check those out. On Sony's end, for free games, Ratchet & Clank from 2016 has been available for free for a while now, and it will be free until March 31st. This is part of Sony's Play at Home campaign that they had last year because of the pandemic, and guess what? The pandemic's continuing, so play some more at home and play these free games. But starting on March 25th, 9 games will be available for free. This is not for PlayStation Plus, just if you have a Sony Interactive Entertainment account. This is Abzu, Enter the Dungeon, Res Infinite, Subnautica, The Witness, Astrobot Rescue Mission, Moss, Thumper, and Paper Beast. All of these will be able to, you can get them for free, add them to your library. Some of these games, music done by composers that we've talked about before. Some of these games that we've talked about before, Astrobot Rescue Mission and Thumper, come to mind. And then another one in that boat appears on April 19th when Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition will be free as well through the Play at Home campaign, sort of starting the run up to a possible sequel later this year if it does not get delayed.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not going to hold my breath on it not getting delayed. But I've heard some people recently mention like it kind of feels like the pandemic is finally starting to catch up with dev cycles. Because last year, yeah, it disrupted some, but like a lot of those games were already just about done. And now we're starting to see the ones that weren't already just about done and how they're going to be messed with in terms of work from home and pandemic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as of the day we're recording this part, currently at least, Gotham Knights just got delayed. And like it's going to be the start of many more to come, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Another release that has gotten a release date here in the West is Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD, which releases on PS4, Switch, and PC in the West on May 25th. Of course, that original soundtrack of the PlayStation 2 game was done by the one and only Shoji Meguro. I have not heard great things about this HD release, but maybe they fixed some of those things by the time it gets to us. Who knows? I'm afraid.
Fingers crossed. It's another great Meguro soundtrack. Can't deny that for sure. Square Enix had a sort of digital presentation to talk about their games, and one of these games that they mentioned was Life is Strange Remastered Collection, which will be coming as a standalone game in fall 2021. It will include Life is Strange and Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is a Chloe prequel story there. This will also be included, though, as part of the Ultimate Edition of Life is Strange True Colors, which is a new game in the Life is Strange series developed by Deck 9 instead of Don't Nod, and Deck 9 developed Before the Storm, so actually good work from them. This game will launch September 10th for PlayStation, Xbox, PC, I think, Stadia as well. Not Switch, though. Not Switch.
Yeah, that's still absolutely bizarre that at least Life is Strange 1 and Before the Storm aren't coming to Switch. That doesn't make any sense. Those games could run on Switch, no problem.
I don't know if it's like moving it up to Unreal Engine 4 instead of Unity. I don't know if that's a big problem, but I don't know. The new True Colors game looks pretty nice compared to visual quality of Life is Strange games of the past. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm especially just looking forward to it being one game that I buy one time and can play all the way through.
telling that the episodic format did not work.
Yeah, I think Life is Strange 2 kind of showed them that as much as I'm sure people wish that it hadn't. I haven't played 2 yet. I still need to. I've heard it's good, but nobody played it.
I did.
You're the only person I know that's played it. Meanwhile, we got another addition to what I think is actually probably my favorite trend in the past. I want to say this has been going on for the past 2 years. And that is that there is an Ace Attorney Orchestra concert being held in Japan on April 10th. You can find it on Twitter at Gyakuten Concert. And this Twitter happens to refer to the Great Ace Attorney, which is the fan-translated name for Dai Gyakuten Saiban, which is the Ace Attorney game where you play as one of Phoenix Wright's ancestors. And this has started fueling rumors that the 2 Great Ace Attorney games that up to this point have been Japan only may be coming worldwide to Switch. And they think that that announcement could potentially be made at the concert. I just personally, well, one, I do hope that that is the case because I want to play Great Ace Attorney. Capcom, please just give it to me. But 2, this has been a great year-long span of just fantastic game concerts, including our next headline.
Yeah, difference between, though, these 2 concerts, I will note. The Ace Attorney one, they're selling tickets for. It's online. It'll be available for up to a week for those who have the tickets. But the fact that they're opening it up to the West and putting tweets in English is, I think, also telling. But this concert is about Paper Mario the Origami King, playing music from that soundtrack. It's called Line Them Up. You can find it on YouTube. It's on the YouTube channel for VGM Together. And this was a collaborative effort that brought together a whole bunch of musicians in the VGM space, both on YouTube and professionals, including performance cameos by musicians and composers such as David Wise, Grant Kirkhope, Lena Rain, Ivy and Sarashu, Austin Wintory, and more. Plenty of composers that we've talked about on this show showing up in this Line Them Up Paper Mario the Origami King fan collaboration concert.
Like I said, this is one of my favorite trends of the past couple years because we got that Undertale concert. We've had live performances by Darren Korb and Ashley Barrett, alongside Austin Wintory doing the conducting of the Supergiant Orchestra behind them. We had news that there was supposed to be a Final Fantasy VII concert tour, and it was going to come to the West, and, 2020 happened, and then it didn't. But hopefully that comes back. I feel like I'm even missing one out of my memory.
Even still, just great to see video game music performances live, whether it's live, online, however, just more appreciation for game music in full live performance mode.
Yeah, because it used to just be video games live. That was basically their one spot, and I kind of like how we're getting more specialized concerts now. It's very cool. Anyways, the biggest bombshell, though, I think of any of these, is that Sony bought Evo.
So we've talked during those episodes on Evo Week, where it's the Evolution fighting game tournament. We've talked about fighting games on the show. Yeah, PlayStation now runs that in a collaborative effort with a new esports RTS company.
There are worse ways this could have gone. To be perfectly fair, Sony is the one that seems like they're the most invested in fighting games of the 3 console manufacturers. Xbox tends to focus more on, they have a Halo and all that. That's their esports place. And they also have PC, because those PCs have to run on Windows. But then Nintendo just sort of doesn't care at all. So, but when tournaments like Evo happen, most of those games are being played on PlayStations anyways. It just sort of makes sense.
Yeah, but you mentioned Nintendo, and we'll have to see what the future of Super Smash Bros. Is at Evo. Should be interesting to see.
I think I heard people saying that KI could also be making a comeback even though that's a Microsoft thing. So I feel like I kind of agree with what Matt from the other Anonymous Dinosaur Show, Smash Pieces, our friend Matt. He brought up, like, I don't see Sony just leaving that money on the table and just being like, no Smash Brothers, none. Because, I mean, it's a viewer favorite game, and that brings in some good money. So it would kind of be a stupid idea, I think, to just bar non-Sony fighting games from the event.
My concern is actually a little more on the Nintendo side of things. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see until the summer.
So, our first game is, of course, Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town. So, first of all, let's get into what Harvest Moon is. Harvest Moon is one of gaming's most iconic slice-of-life farming franchises, though nowadays it's known as Story of Seasons, and we'll get to why in a bit, but also nowadays it feels like Stardew Valley has snatched that throne away pretty hard. Stardew Valley is now the king of the genre, and it's really just the ultimate example of a farming game. But in Harvest Moon's case, the series began in 1996 with the original Harvest Moon for the SNES. And since then, there have been entries for Game Boy, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, Game Boy Advance, GameCube, Nintendo DS, PSP, PS Vita, Wii, 3DS, and Switch. So it's a storied franchise. Friends of Mineral Town is the 9th game in the series, and it originally released for the Game Boy Advance on April 18th, 2003 in Japan, November 17th, 2003 in North America, and March 26th, 2004 in Europe. A second version, titled More Friends of Mineral Town, released in Japan on December 12th, 2003, and July 26th, 2005, everywhere else. This version of the game is overall identical, except you can play as a female farmer, or I guess I shouldn't say you can play, you do play as a female farmer. So basically imagine if instead of adding the female trainer to Pokemon Crystal, they just released Pokemon More Gold and More Silver, and in those versions of the game, you played as a female trainer. Pretty much just that. Weird way to go about it, especially on the GBA, I feel like. So, this game is apparently considered to technically be a remake, though, of the PS1 title Harvest Moon Back to Nature, which I did not know. That game originally released in 1999. Much of the game is very similar to Stardew Valley, and we talked about Stardew Valley back in episode 18, a real long time ago. But basically, the game works as you play as a character who grew up in the city, and their parents brought them on a trip to the country when they were very young. During the trip, the child wound up lost and wandered onto a farm outside of Mineral Town belonging to an old man. The old man helps them contact their parents, and the child spends the rest of the trip on this farm with his parents. They even befriend a local girl. Afterwards, the child and the old man become pen pals, writing letters back and forth for years. When the letters suddenly stop, one day, the main character goes to Mineral Town to visit him and make sure everything's all right. Unfortunately, they then learn that the old man has since passed away, but also that the old man had left the main character the farm in his will, which is a lot. That must have been one lonely old man. So the main character is tasked with reviving the farm, clearing out the fields, now covered in wood and rocks and grass, in order to use them to plant crops to harvest and sell. You buy seeds, you hoe the ground, you plant the seeds, you water the crops, rinse and repeat until they bloom, until you can actually harvest them. The player can also save to buy various types of livestock, such as cows, chickens, and sheep, that can also provide resources that you can sell. All the while, you can also interact with the various citizens of the nearby mineral town, including a variety of bachelors and bachelorettes you can befriend, maybe even one day marry. Obviously, it's not like Stardew Valley where you can marry all of the romance options regardless of your gender. It's girls if you're playing Mineral Town, guys if you're playing more Mineral Town. This was where I was going to move on and ask what your experiences were with the game, but then I found out that More Friends of Mineral Town has a completely different intro plot. So instead of becoming pen pals with an old man, where it's a heartwarming, nice beginning, the girl in More Friends of Mineral Town gets scammed into buying this farm.
What?
She's like reading an ad in the paper in the city that's like, come buy this beautiful farm. It's great. And when she gets there, it's like run down and broken. So guys get heartwarming stories. Girls just get scammed into buying a farm. I don't understand why I don't get it.
You don't have to sign that deed.
It's so dumb. I had no idea that I just assumed they were both the same. But apparently that's not the case.
Thanks, Japan.
Thanks, Japan. Anyways, this is where I will ask, Peter, what are your experiences with Friends of Mineral Town or Harvest Moon in general, honestly?
Oh my gosh, I know so little about Harvest Moon, honestly. I think I maybe seen a little bit of gameplay of Back to Nature, so the fact that you bring that up in reference to this game is interesting, I suppose. But yeah, I feel like I've seen more and know a little bit more about Stardew Valley than I do anything about Harvest Moon. Though, yeah, when you talk about that storied history of all those games, it sure seems like a history. I am very interested to learn about the Change to Story of Seasons, because I feel like I don't know that tale yet.
I've been streaming Friends of Mineral Town recently. I've done 2 sessions at time of recording. By the time you hear this, I've probably made that 3. It has taught me multiple very valuable lessons, such as the fact that I should never bet on horse races. Ever. The last time I played, there was the horse race event, and you can bet on which horse you think's going to win out of the 4. And I put my very little money all on one horse, and that horse got 3rd place out of 4. But then there were still 2 more races. So I didn't have any more money to bet, so we were just watching the races, and on stream, I'd be like, I like that one. I think that one will win. And then that horse would get 4th place. And then in the next race, I pointed out another horse I liked, and then that horse got 4th place. And everybody in the chat was like, I don't know if you're the best or worst person to ever, or for me to bring to like the horse track if I want to win money. So that was certainly an experience. Mineral Town's the only Harvest Moon game I've played. I don't think it's as good as Stardew Valley, but like, again, that's hindsight. Like, Stardew Valley has the advantage of just being after decades of Harvest Moon games. But it's enjoyable so far, at the very least. That being said, there is absolutely no information on the development of this game anywhere. I looked as much as I could. There's nothing. So instead, we're going to talk about the thing that you just mentioned, which is the move to Story of Seasons. So if you were paying attention at the beginning and when Peter was talking earlier, this series is now known as Story of Seasons, except if you follow game releases, you might notice that there are still games coming out called Harvest Moon.
What?
So what's the deal with that? Well, for a long time, from the beginning, Harvest Moon was published in North America by the company Natsume. And this isn't unusual. Games are regularly published by different companies in different regions. Happens all the time. Except the developer, Marvelous, ended their contract with Natsume in 2012. So you'd think that would just be it, right? Well, it turns out Natsume kept the trademark on the Harvest Moon title. In Japan, the series is called Farm Story. So it wasn't a problem in Japan. Instead of just leaving it, Natsume began commissioning and publishing their own games titled Harvest Moon, starting with 2014's Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley for the 3DS. This was obviously a problem for Marvelous, as the Harvest Moon name kinda had a spot in video game history in the West, but they weren't allowed to use it anymore. So all future games in the series began to be localized under the title Story of Seasons, starting with 2014's simply named Story of Seasons for the 3DS.
So both games came out in 2014?
Yeah. And you know, the reason I'm bringing Friends of Mineral Town this week is because a new Story of Seasons game comes out this week, and either last week or next week, a Harvest Moon game comes out for the Switch.
Stop it. That's crazy.
So that's just been how it goes since this Switch happened. So to summarize, Harvest Moon is no longer actually Harvest Moon. It's just Harvest Moon style games with the name Harvest Moon, and Story of Seasons is in fact Harvest Moon. It is one of the most bizarre trademark stories in the industry. I love it. It's so dumb. It's so weirdly petty, and it's just great.
See, I always associated Natsume with Harvest Moon, but I didn't know Marvelous was the developer.
Yeah, Marvelous is the Japanese developer. By the way, the games that Natsume publishes called Harvest Moon, they don't come out in Japan. They only come out in America and Europe, which is even funnier. Like, wow, so they know exactly what they're doing.
It's where the name still has cachet.
Yeah, I find it deeply fascinating. I can't think of any other franchise this has happened to in video games. It's incredible. Anyways, let's jump back to Mineral Town specifically. Friends of Mineral Town was received very well upon release with a Metacritic score of 81. More Friends did slightly better with an 82. I guess they had to make up for the main character getting scammed in some way. But then most recently, there was actually a remake of Friends of Mineral Town. A 3D remake that came out last year called Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. It released for Switch and PC in Japan in 2019, but we got it last year in 2020, which I have not bought it. I might look into it after I get my fill of the GBA version, because, I mean, hey, why not? So, in terms of the composer for Friends of Mineral Town, we're going to talk about Ai Yamashita. Or at least we would, because I don't have very much information on her. It's surprisingly difficult to research this lady, because there is an entirely other musical artist named Ai Yamashita, who is much younger and began her career in 2017. So I'm going to assume not the person that did the music for this 2004 Game Boy Advance game. And her website is the first result to come up when Googling her name, as well as a bunch of other pages. I did manage to find a scant bit of info, including on VGMDB, who is also lacking in their listings of what she's worked on, because apparently she's only worked on like 2 games that got actual soundtrack releases. She was born on March 20th, year unknown, in Yokohama, Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan. She entered the games industry in 2003, and she joined Square Enix in 2005. And she was also a member of the group The Hanjuku Mages, a group made up of multiple other Square composers, including Nobuo Uematsu.
Also interesting that both of our composers were born in Yokohama. Interesting. Another theme.
In terms of her discography, in 2003, she did the soundtrack for the game Nintendo Puzzle Collection. And then, of course, did Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town. And then the one source that I could find listed that she had done work on the soundtrack of Hanjuku Hero 4, The Seven Heroes, as well as the music for Alabest, which is a browser game that was developed by Taito, and she worked alongside Masayoshi Soken on this soundtrack. And then she is listed on VGMDB as having contributed to Final Fantasy XIV before Meteor. I don't know if that means she worked on the game or she just did arrangements for that event or for the soundtrack release itself, but she's credited there, and that's it.
Well, probably the connection with Masayoshi Soken helped. I mean,
probably. But like, yeah, that's all. That's all I could find. Funnily enough, the only source I could even find about her that mentions Friends of Mineral Town at all says, quote, also in 2003, she worked as the composer for the Game Boy Advance's Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, creating 12 tracks that suited their purposes well. And that's all it says. The most unhelpful 2 sentences I've ever read. So yeah, I don't have anything else to talk about in terms of Harvest Moon. So let's just jump right into the 5 critical tracks, starting with critical track number 1, title theme. As you might expect, this plays on the title screen. And it's just a wonderfully cheerful song. Like, the GBA MIDI is a bit rough, and you're going to hear that in all of these. Just like, I feel like this is an earlier game than the 2 GBA games we talked about 2 weeks ago. Because the MIDI quality is not great. But overall, I just think this is a very wonderful and laid-back song that's a perfect introduction to the world.
There are some instruments that do kind of sound Game Boy Color, like you're right. But yeah, the whistle is wow. I'm surprised by how good that whistle is for the time. That's really neat. And yeah, just a perfect happy little theme. I don't know what a main Harvest Moon theme is. I don't know if it's playing off of a leitmotif that's been established throughout the franchise, but it sure sets the mood and the tone for this game.
Yeah, if it's a leitmotif throughout the franchise, I also would not know. I've never played any Harvest Moon game that's not this. Following that is actually my favorite song in the game. It is Mineral Town. This song is so bouncy and upbeat and fun. This is the song that plays when you go into town, as you might expect. And it just really paints this vibe of like, it's a happy little community and everybody's got this energy that's really contagious and it's a fun place to be. It's a nice place to live. And, I don't know. I absolutely adore this song. It's very GBA, but great.
A great song for sure. And I get weird flashbacks, which make me wonder, like, is this something from Back to Nature? It's something just like in the back of my mind where it's like, this feels super familiar and I have no idea why. Or maybe it's just scratching that itch of like, yeah, this is just a happy little town and it's painting that picture perfectly. But yeah, I mean, it's GBA to the core and it sounds really good.
It almost reminds me of a Pokemon town theme. Almost if the instruments were, need to be a little better for a Pokemon. I think what it reminds me of is like Gen 1, Gen 2 town themes, but like bumped up to a GBA MIDI, essentially.
That sounds right. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Because it's not quite Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, but like I could see it being like a up-res of gold and silver. Following that is critical track number 3, Summer Season. You don't have to say season in the title of your song. Everybody knows what summer is. But anyways, this is more really, really upbeat music and it plays on the farm during summer. I've not heard this song in game because I'm still stuck in spring after 2 sessions. That's my one complaint about this game is, wow, it's slow. But I absolutely love this song. It plays off really well with the theme of like summer is for fun and it's good and it's happy and the weather is nice and best get that fun out now because fall and winter are coming. And I think this song really brings it across.
Yeah, super upbeat, and it fits, that warm atmosphere really, really well. That's interesting that you mentioned like the slow pace. I mean, I'm sure some people like that, especially if you're a kid with a Game Boy Advance and you have all the time in the world. Maybe that helps, but yeah, maybe that's just the difference of playing as adults. And it's also a good point to note out that for Summer Season as the title, I mean, this is another case where the game doesn't have an official soundtrack release. It could just be someone titling it as such, and who knows what the official title. This could be like Sun and Wild Berries or something like that as its title, and we have no idea, right? So
yeah, this song, it never got Harvest Moon, like you say, it's never gotten an official release. None of these songs have official titles. Following that is a very important song to talk about in the context of Harvest Moon. It's Critical Check number 4, Heart Event. Heart events are very important in Harvest Moon. They are the story events that happen as you befriend various romantic interests in town. You're getting to know them better. That's what this song sort of brings about. It also just seems to have this air of cuteness. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's the vibe I get.
Yeah, everything's like happy and smiles. It's not necessarily mystical in a way, but like the kind of reverb on the main melody is just like, it's like, wow, you're looking at her and everything's great. Things are developing. Looking through the soundtrack overall, there seem to be like 2 heart events. I'm not sure if you have any insight into what that might be or if you just haven't gotten that far yet.
So the other one is the rival heart event, because in Mineral Town, every romantic interest has another guy that they're paired with. And you have to woo them before that guy does.
Oh, okay.
So a rival heart event is basically, I have been trying to marry Mary. She's the librarian. And I have now walked in on 2 heart events with her other love interest, and I've only gotten one with her so far. So it might be a lost cause.
Oh, no.
That's how those shake out. This one's for when it's yours. And then rival heart event is for when your love is slipping through your fingers, as it often does for me.
Aww.
Anyways, following that is Critical Track number 5. It's credits. I don't know, man. It's the credits theme. Though I will say, and you can hear it in the clip, that's just the Great C. Right?
Sure. I was more thinking like those are some Game Boy MIDIs right at the beginning with those 2 samples. Like, you didn't even try to upscale it to Game Boy Advance.
Like, yeah, they're very dated MIDIs for sure, but like there's the dun da da dun da da dun da da. That's just the Great C.
For sure. From Wind Waker, absolutely.
I see you, Yamashita. Pretty sure Wind Waker came out after this game. But Did it? When did Wind Waker come out? What year?
2002.
Oh, man. So this would be... I got you, Yamashita. I got you.
Okay,
I've caught you. No, I doubt that's anything. I kind of just like this song. I've not heard it in game. I don't actually know when the credits roll.
That's a good question.
I know some Harvest Moon games have like a defined end, where like at that point you die, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I will probably not hear the song in game anytime soon. But it's just a nice overall nice piece, even if that's some dated MIDI right there.
Woof. Yeah, and it's good, right? Credits, just kind of wraps up the Critical 5, completes the journey, the journey on the farm, I guess. A good piece to wrap things up.
So, 4 tracks on the cutting room floor. I've got 2. The first one is Spring Season. This is actually one of the first songs you hear in the game, because the game starts in spring, and this is the song that plays on your farm during spring. I don't know, it just has this nice little serene feeling. It kind of sounds like a new beginning, almost. But it's another one of those like, oh, this is kind of just, this feels like a Game Boy song, kind of upscaled, but like, and I'm not saying that as a detrimental thing, it's just, it's very obvious that this was like probably an earlier GBA game.
It's another melody that's kind of needling the back of my brain. Makes me wonder if there was some reference taken from Back to Nature. So, but yeah, perfect. It's light. It's not as energetic as the warm summer, but things are opening up. Things can bloom again. You can plant your crops. And yeah, if it's early on and kind of teaching you the ropes of Harvest Moon, that checks out. That makes sense.
And following that, my other song on the cutting room floor is Wedding. So yes, look, maybe on the box it says that it's a farming game, but let's be real. The real true goal of Harvest Moon is to marry your waifu or husbando, depending on what version you're playing. So I figured this song deserves mention in at least some form. Obviously, as you might have guessed, it's the song that plays when you are getting married.
Yeah, a legally distinct version of the Bridal March.
It sure is. Which is weird because that song is public domain.
Yeah, it should be, right? And so, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to skirt around it and be careful. But yeah, obviously everyone knows that's the point of Harvest Moon. Like,
yeah.
It's not crops, it's not animals, it's get the girl or guy.
It's like saying the point of Persona games is to get through the dungeons and solve the mystery. No, it's date someone. That's the final goal of Persona.
Yeah, it's best girl, best boy. Those are the real conversations to be had.
Fire Emblem's not about war, it's about babies. So what will I never forget about Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town? I mean, I'm still playing it. It's fine. I wouldn't say that it's a game that, oh man, you need to go back and play this game. Nah, if you have Stardew Valley, you've already got the better version of this game. Just in general. But it's neat to go back to and see like how heavily Stardew improved upon this whole formula. And I'm very interested actually in thinking about purchasing the new Story of Seasons game, which comes out again this week. It's Pioneers of Olive Town. And I might grab that, but I have a couple other games a little bit higher on my priority list. I haven't even bought Persona 5 Strikers yet, so that's probably going to be first.
Oh my gosh, what a weird title. I would have never thought that Pioneers of Olive Town would be the subtitle of a video game. Goodness. But yeah, no, you're right. Always good to see where the genre came from, even if it's been improved many times over since.
Yeah, it's not the best aged game, but I haven't hit anything so far where it's just terrible. So, there's that. Anyways, for our transition, we like to highlight a fan cover, regardless of where it may be from, be it OC Remix. It's usually YouTube, let's be real. It's usually off of YouTube. And mine, I managed to find a delightful cover of the Mineral Town theme on the channel Songbird Ocarina. And it is a guitar and ocarina duet doing the town theme, and it's so, so good. So please enjoy that, and we will be right back.
All right, let's get to talking about a game that is not like Harvest Moon at all.
In any way, shape, or form, except for being able to pet dogs and fishing and social links, and I guess they're basically the same game.
And then the composers that we're highlighting are both born in Yokohama. Look, there's too many similarities, but still, let's talk about a game that takes place much later in the release window cycle calendar than Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town. It's 2020's HADES. HADES, a game we both enjoy. I feel like there's going to be a lot of gushing this part of the show. So, HADES was released on September 17th, 2020 for PC and Nintendo Switch. This was the full 1.0 release of the game because HADES was available as an early access game since December 2018. Early access being, it's still early, we're still working on it, we're getting your feedback, people who play it, and we'll make adjustments over time. It was something new that Supergiant Games was trying. Relevant this week because a physical version for Nintendo Switch just released on March 19th, 2021. This is the version highlighted in the recent Nintendo Direct, where it's got the download to the soundtrack, composed by Darren Corbin. It has that art book with the different characters, and mighty tempting if you've played a lot of HADES, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold myself back from buying this physical copy of a game that I already own digitally in 2 different locations.
I mean, just to have it, right? HADES is developed and published by Supergiant Games. This is the 3rd Supergiant game that we are covering on the show out of their 4 games total that they have made. It's the first one I'm talking about because previously you brought Bastion to the show on episode 3, and then their 3rd game, Pyre, on episode 65. So we're missing Transistor, game number 2 in the Supergiant library, but I'm sure we'll get to that eventually because also, as you mentioned last week, a really good soundtrack that has inspired some other soundtrack work.
Mm-hmm. It's only a matter of time for us. It's only a matter of time for Transistor, baby.
That's right. It's coming. We'll figure out who to talk about on that one. That'll be a whole other discussion. HADES is a roguelike action role-playing game with an isometric camera view. Now, those are a couple words that we haven't used too often on this show, so let's kind of break down what a couple of those mean. First of all, isometric basically means it's not top-down, like old school Legend of Zelda. It's not side-scrolling, like old school Super Mario Brothers. Think of it as if the camera is in the corner of a room. It's almost like that 45-degree, 3-dimensional look, but it's not first person where you're looking through the eyes of the character. It's not third person where the camera's behind the character. It's this different camera in a corner look for a room. Now, roguelike is a subgenre that's odd to define because it's based off an old game called Rogue. And so Wikipedia defines roguelike as, quote, a subgenre of role-playing video games characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, tile-based graphics, and permanent death of the player character. I feel like Hades definitely borrows that procedurally generated levels, permanent death of the player character. So you're doing repeated runs, essentially. I think that's generally what roguelikes are done, this day and age.
We've talked about a couple of roguelikes on this show, I'm pretty sure. Dicey Dungeons is a roguelike.
Yep.
But have we talked about any others?
Not too many. It's not I feel like it's a genre that's starting to make some comeback. I mean, The Binding of Isaac was one that certainly helped bring roguelikes kind of back into...
Binding of Isaac and Rogue Legacy were the big ones.
Oh, Rogue Legacy,
and Spelunky.
Absolutely.
Spelunky was also up there, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I feel like those ones kind of in the early to mid-2010s kind of helped bring this genre kind of back into awareness, so to speak. So, in general... in Hades, your character is trying to escape the depths of the underworld and reach the surface. And as you go through the 4 main environments or biomes of the game, you enter randomly generated dungeon rooms and defeat an assortment of enemies with a reward at the end of each room that you choose specifically to then build your character more for a deeper run at escaping. Now, especially as you start the game, you start your save file, the idea is that the game is difficult and you're expected to die. Your character will die probably sooner than you expect most runs. However, you take some permanent rewards back home with you after death, and you use those to build your character's statistics permanently so that the next run is ideally easier. The player's choice of which non-player characters to interact with also influences the Hades game experience, as well as its overall narrative. So, all told, putting everything together, it's a roguelike action, because you're defeating enemies, role-playing game with that isometric camera view. It's pretty unique. Once you start seeing it, it starts to make a whole lot more sense. The narrative of Hades involves Zagreus, who is the son of the aforementioned Hades, and Zagreus seeks to escape his father's realm in the Underworld. He is assisted by his mentor Achilles, who provides Zagreus with the Infernal Arms, 6 weapons that possess powerful and hidden aspects of their past, present, and future wielders. He is also aided by his adoptive mother Nyx, who gives him a special mirror that empowers him with various abilities via a collected darkness currency. But most importantly, during Zagreus' escape attempts, the gods of Olympus also provide him with boons that give him special powers. Hades does not want Zagreus to leave, and will hinder his process by unleashing the Underworld's various residents on him, including the Fury Megara, who's Zagreus' ex-lover, and later on her sisters Alecto and Tisiphone. There's also a Lernian Bone Hydra, the legendary Theseus alongside his new partner Asterius the Minotaur, and finally, Hades himself. So why does Zagreus want to escape the Underworld? Which deeper bonds will he form along the way? And can Zagreus successfully escape? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Hades?
So this is probably the first time we have talked about a game where our feelings on this game are well documented in this show. We have mentioned it multiple times as the game that we are playing. We talked about it a lot in the Best of 2020 episode where it was ranked like number 2. And I have said that it is my game of the year last year. It was my 2020 game of the year by far. I don't like roguelikes. I love Hades.
Yeah, just an incredible game, honestly. I feel like when the end of 2020 came around, and I had only played so much of Hades, like I beat Hades once, and then I beat him a couple more times. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, put the 2020 games in order. How would you rank them? And I put Hades at number 7. For the amount of time that I've played Hades in 2021, if I had to revisit, I'd probably put it at number 4. I'd slide it up that list considerably more. Because, yeah, once you play it more times and it does become easier and you get to those 10 victories over Hades. And then the story still continues further. It's a really impressive piece of work that Supergiant did. And you're absolutely right. I mean, when you talk about how the roguelike genre seems really tough to approach at first. And, not a lot of games are too nice about that. But Hades strikes that balance nicely. And it's now my fiance's favorite game. She mentions that she's addicted to playing it. And I feel like that is a testament to even someone who is still learning all that console games have to offer with a traditional video game controller, how she can pick it up and play it and love it. And I think that's it's real telling about how the game is designed so well. It's so rewarding. It has the narrative to back it up. It has these characters, the music, it's the full package. And for it to compete and win some Game of the Year awards from different outlets last year, I think that's super telling.
And honestly, I would personally say I think that Hades is going to go down as like one of the best games ever made, just in general. I think it's going to get lumped in there with stuff like Chrono Trigger or Super Mario World and stuff like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think in 5 years, Hades is still going to be a game people are talking about.
Oh, we're going to look back on it fondly for sure. At the very least, just how to make a tough genre approachable at the very least. So it's going to be one to mention for sure. And yeah, you're right. We've mentioned Hades a lot on the show, and it was finally time to talk about it. And what perfect time than with the Nintendo Switch physical version coming out to kind of make it a little more relevant again. But let's talk about the development of Hades and some things that I learned about the whole process. After the release of Pyre in 2017, Supergiant Games was still a small team of about 20 people. So a partnership was established with Epic Games to develop their next game in early access with the recently established Epic Games Store on PC. As I mentioned, early access would allow for community feedback while the game was still in a kind of beta unfinished state. In figuring out what kind of game to make next, Supergiant settled on a concept that would be easy to pick up and play, which could be played in very short periods, and had opportunities for expanding on after release, which drove them toward the roguelike genre, which, oddly enough, is a genre that actually works well when you're considering the feedback that would be taken from the game being in early access. Pyre, as you mentioned when we talked about the game previously on the show, it has a more open-ended narrative. It's something that Supergiant really tried to expand on for that game in particular. But the development team found that players would only beat Pyre once and then stop and miss most of that post-game content. So making Hades a roguelike game allowed for a more addictive gameplay loop, more possibilities for telling an interweaving story, especially when it was full of small player choices, and just overall more players experiencing that encompassing large story. There was some consideration to go back to Supergiant's previous game worlds, whether it's Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, when it comes to the narrative, but there was also great interest on the team regarding putting their own spin on Greek mythology. Originally, the game was planned to be named Minos, with the hero Theseus as the player character seeking an exit from the ever-shifting mazes of Minos. While this did support the roguelike structure really well with randomly procedurally generated dungeons, it was difficult to build a narrative off of this concept. Also, Supergiant kind of considered Theseus to be a bit too boring of a protagonist.
Good.
Yeah, right. But they definitely amped him up for his appearance in Hades, but how they originally constructed him is there's just not much to work with. So then focus shifted to the Greek pantheon, who were considered, quote, a big dysfunctional family that we can see ourselves in. Since the team found that Hades was often underrepresented in Greek myth, possibly due to the gods' fear of him and death, The narrative construct of Prince Zagreus trying to escape with the help of the gods was overall established. The game's art, primarily done by in-house artist Gen Z, shows all of these Olympians as attractive, with tasteful homage to the, quote, heroic nudity of ancient Greek art. Everyone is very sexy. Everyone's attractive. Everyone looks the best they can possibly look.
Hades is the farthest you can go into being a ridiculously horny game without hitting like a rated M territory. It's so good. All of the character designs I've heard so many people describe as like, this is the best design this Greek mythology character's ever had. All of them.
Oh, all of them. Yes, for sure. Without a doubt. Also, the game is super wordy. The script in this game is beefy. It's intense. Greg Kasavin, the creative director for the game, revealed that Hades' script contains over 300,000 words. To put this in perspective, the game's script is longer than the classic epics of ancient Greece, being the Iliad and the Odyssey, put together.
Wow. Okay.
300,000 words also makes it comparable to the script length of the original Mass Effect. But it's telling when you play the game for so long and you're frequently hearing new lines of dialogue pop up, or new interactions between characters, and new developments with those characters' stories, like little things popping up here and there. I mean, sure, some lines you do hear over and over when you're picking up that nectar for the 50th time, and maybe you hear something you've heard before, but there are so many new little nuggets and things sprinkled throughout. It's impressive.
It is so crazy because I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but, Tisiphone? The Fury who all she says is murder.
Mm-hmm.
She apparently has like 300 lines in the script. This character says one word.
Wow, all the kudos to Marin Miller then, the partner of Martin Billany, Little Karibo.
They also voice Alecto.
Yeah. And Athena.
And well. Athena, yes, you're right. I forgot about that one too.
Yeah, just overall, like, the voice cast work is phenomenal.
Did you happen to find who voices Zagreus?
Oh, of course. I mean, yeah. I feel like that's... So, for those that don't know, it's one of those things where, like, if you know who voices one character in this game, it should be Zagreus. But we've talked about Darren Korb plenty on this show.
Mm-hmm.
He's the audio director for the game.
He also voices Skelly.
Yes, he does. So he not only directs all of the voiceover, he composes all of the music, just overall audio director on the game. And yeah, he voices the protagonist of Zagreus. And yeah, you're right, Skelly. He's the singing voice for Orpheus. Like, it's really cool, like, where they draw all the different actors from. I mean, Logan Cunningham. Way back in Bastion, we talked about, the narrator on Bastion, and it's such a neat thing. Logan Cunningham, he's Hades. He's getting nominated for awards for his work as Hades. He's Poseidon. He's all these different, voice roles. They did a great job with casting overall and making these characters sound different. Granted, some of them, like Dusa, is like you pitch shifted that one up.
Yeah, but I love Dusa. I love Dusa with all my heart. That girl deserves all the happiness in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like before we start to get in some of the reviews, let's just gush. While we're already starting to gush.
Yeah,
but,
why not?
I mean, let's just get into it. Like, your favorite weapon, your favorite gods generally come across for boons. I mean, what are some of your favorites when you're making your runs?
So my favorite weapon regularly switches between. I really like the Aegis Shield because I can Captain America. You put some Doom on that one and bam, that throwing that thing is amazing. But I think more often my favorite weapon is the fists. The fists of Malphor are so good. Especially when you can get like the uppercut, you can get a boon that makes the uppercut magnetize enemies and bring them towards you. And then you can also put a boon on it that causes the it to have like a riptide effect that pushes them away. So then you can just keep like pulling them in and shooting them out. And oh, it's so good. In terms of boons, I'm usually pretty think on my feet for pretty much all of them, except for if Poseidon offers me his call, that is the call.
Yeah, that's the one, right?
You power that up with a couple of palms of power and that it melts bosses. It's amazing.
I feel like if people are struggling early on, the one big breakthrough I had was I rarely used casts. I rarely used calls. Use your casts, use your calls. It makes a huge difference in your success playing the game.
See, I still don't really use casts like at all.
Oh, interesting.
And there's something I should do, but like I just tend to gravitate towards when I'm getting a boon, it's either on my weapon or it's the call and it's powering up the call and all that. And it's, that kind of thing. I really, really... Oh, I know what one of my favorite boons is. One of my favorites is, I think, Dionysus gives you a boon that makes it so that healing at a fountain automatically gives you all your health back and also then increases your attack power every time you use a fountain. That one is top tier. I love that one.
That one is really good for sure. So for me, I like using the spear most.
Spear's good. Spear's good.
Feel like that's especially when you put the aspect of Hades on it and the spin attack becomes like a punishing one like that. That's super good. For me, then it's tied between the sword and the fists. And I'm also like starting to dig the bow a little bit. I didn't like the bow as much, but for using casts, I now unlocked, was it the aspect of Hestia, I think, where you can load your casts into your next attack, your next bow fire, which if you have like Artemis, her casts, where they'll just home in on enemies. Yeah, that's super good. Like casts can be buffed up to pretty high attack power, so they're just really good there. So I'm liking that. I do not like the adamant rail, the machine gun. Like,
yeah, that's my least favorite weapon too.
I think I've unlocked all the different like Daedalus hammer variants for like all of the weapons, except I'm like maybe halfway through the adamant rail. It's just tough to use that one for me.
That being said, did you expect the last weapon to just be a gun?
No, I didn't.
It's unapologetically a gun. You have to reload it and everything.
The reloading it's not something that I certainly would have expected. But there's certain upgrades where it's like you fire in triple shots, but you have unlimited ammo. So I mean, it's like there's certainly some upgrades, some benefits there. Athena dash is amazing.
Every time I don't get Athena's dash, I always get the witch's circle. Every single time. It never gives it to me when I have the dash that's perfect for it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's just rude. You're right. Poseidon call is great. I also love Artemis or Aphrodite for those calls when it's just big blast. But you just got to make sure you have one target. You don't want it going anywhere else. Casts. Artemis. I used to stay away from Artemis stuff for a while, but now I generally like picking up those Artemis boons for sure. Poseidon also has great boons for sure. The overall Dionysus, I feel like I pick him in certain situations, but I don't like going with Hangover so much. I hate his lob cast. It's just really slow for me. So I generally stay away from Dionysus if I can. But yeah, no, I mean, just the game is great. I know we're gushing about, here's one more thing we got to gush about. How long did it take you to beat Hades for the first time? What run was it?
I want to say it was somewhere in the 30s.
Okay.
Might have been high 20s, but it took me a little while. I beat him without God mode the first time, and it was like, all right, I'm turning God mode on now because I beat him 9 more times. I proved myself already. I did it.
That's exactly what I did too. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. It took me run 23, I think, was the one I beat for the first time. I put God mode on then, and by run 40, I had credits roll.
Yeah, I think that's around what I got too. Because I don't think I had a single unsuccessful run basically after that.
Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, what a game. Honestly, Hades reviewed very well with a Metacritic score of 93, including a 10 out of 10 from some critic named Joe DeVader over at Nintendo World Report.
Kind of sounds like this is a guy that doesn't know what he's talking about. Obviously, Hades is an 11 out of 10. God, reviewers are so paid off.
If such a score were possible. Critics praised Hades for its story, characters, gameplay, and soundtrack. If anything, I think some players may not be cut out for the repetition that just comes with the genre. It's just what it takes with a roguelike. Even though, as we mentioned, the game is very inviting for those that have never dabbled in the genre.
Yeah, it is basically the perfect toe-dipping game for this genre, in my opinion.
I mean, it's not baby's first roguelike, like Pokemon Red and Blue was baby's first RPG, but it's still like it does everything right and balances it just so. During its nearly 2-year-long early access period, Hades sold 700,000 copies. Within 3 days of its official release, it sold an additional 300,000 copies for a sales total of over 1 million units. And honestly, word of mouth has only grown since then. The website Steam Spy pegs it between 2 to 5 million on the Steam PC platform. And that's not even considering Nintendo Switch, even if that figure is accurate. I feel like at some point we're going to see Hades released on PS4, Xbox One, PS5, Xbox Series, and it'll be like, oh, rediscover it all over again, and the word of mouth is only going to grow from there. It's just going to be a continuing, talking point for Hades.
Yeah, I believe in 5 years we'll still be talking about Hades. I really do believe that.
It'll make me wonder what Hades is like with achievements, because playing on Switch, as I have been, you don't have those, but it makes you wonder.
Well, you kind of have them with the Fates prophecies, but it's not really the same thing.
Yeah, no. Oh man, I just hit that the other day where like I beat the game with all the infernal arms, and so it gave me the 10 Titan blood, and then I used those to unlock the rest of the aspects of the infernal arms. So I got like 6 diamonds. It was great. Hades was nominated for 9 awards at the Game Awards. Some of those awards including Game of the Year and Best Score and Music. It won Best Indie Game and Best Action Game. It's been nominated for 9 BAFTAs and 8 DICE Awards. That's a pretty good nomination list from some big video game award shows. One problem, as you mentioned last week with Ekenfell, these award shows have not happened yet as of this recording.
COVID kind of made everything a little weird this year.
Yeah, so I'm sure it'll win some more awards, deservingly so. And honestly, we're just getting started with Hades' legacy. I think as you mentioned, I mean, we'll probably be talking about this game for a while. It's a great game to go back to and see what happens. Now, Supergiant hasn't really made any DLC in the past for their games, but never say never. No currently announced plans for any downloadable content, but it's not impossible. If you want a great documentary of the full, unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at the development of Hades, you should definitely check out the 6-part no-clip series on YouTube called Hades Developing Hell. At the very least, it's really cool to see Darren Korb talk about his work and do some voiceover recording and, play some riffs that sound familiar with the soundtrack. It's super neat, and that's just one aspect of it. So cool. I think they had a section where they talked about how COVID impacted things. They had a section at the very end when the game launched and like what the reaction was like with review scores and all that. So it seems like a very full look inside of the development process.
Also, fantastic 10 out of 10 name of that documentary. Developing Hell is fantastic, and whoever came up with it deserves a raise.
Yeah. No, that team, Danny O'Dwyer and company, they're fantastic. All right, so Darren Korb, mentioned him many times on Original Soundchat. composed the music.
We've talked to him even.
That's right. We have even done that. Then there's Ashley Barrett, who you highlighted on the Pyre episode. So, I mean, she's also involved with the music in this game. Well, if we can't talk about both of them, we got to come up with someone new. Looking through. Who is Daisuke Kurosawa? Let's talk about Daisuke Kurosawa this week. He's born on February 23rd, 1983 in Yokohama, Japan. He is most commonly known by his alias of 96 or Kuro, but he's also gone by 96 Chang or Kuro Chang and Black Capsule. He is blood type B because
important to know.
It's so important. We got to bring that up if it's provided. He learned how to play the guitar at 13, the bass at 16, and the drums at 18. In 2003, he won the second prize at the Dream Theater Official Songwriting Contest. Guessing that's something in Japan. He's primarily worked at Konami, and he is best known for his hard rock songs since his 2006 debut in Guitar Freaks V3 and Drum Mania V3. He is a composer for a bunch of Bemani games, and Bemani being Konami's music video game division. So a lot of, I mean, like DDR would kind of come from there, but Konami's made several other music video games in that stable of Bemani games. In 2013, Daisuke Kurosawa released the first solo album of his titled Black Album. He left Konami in early 2017 and he joined a newly formed music company named Inspion. He was in a band called Orbital Resonance from 2003 to 2011, where he released 2 albums, and he currently has a band called Daisuke Kurosawa Progressive Band, has his own YouTube channel at Daisuke Kurosawa. You can follow him on Twitter at Kuro_96Chang, or he's at Bandcamp at Daisuke Kurosawa. As far as the discography goes, it's just a ton of Bemani games. Like that's it. Like I'd be here if I were to list them all. I don't even know where to distinguish what titles released. It's an area so far out of my knowledge base, and it's such a deep well to even enter. But anyways, the historical development research for Hades. Let's bring it back to Darren Korb, who described the soundtrack as, quote, Mediterranean prog rock Halloween.
That's such a good name for it.
It's pretty spot on. Overall, he says most of the music during a run generally has 3 forms. There's like a bass layer synth pad with some minimal percussion. There's an acoustic folk version of a song, and then it can get cranked up to a hard rock or metal version of that song. Now, as I mentioned, Korb was the audio director for this game, not only composing the music for the game, directing the voiceover performances, and as you brought up, voices Zagreus, Skelly, and he's also the singing voice for Orpheus. When we got to interview Darren Korb, Hades was still in early access. We could only hear the music on Spotify, and we even got to talk about, during that interview, about Orpheus and how he noted it was basically, what kind of songs do you write if you're the greatest musician in history? Like, what music would move the gods to tears? And so he came up with the thought of a cherubic angelic voice as the answer, thus tapping into his falsetto. And so having Orpheus sing in this high-pitched falsetto voice not only matches the theme of what he was attempting to do with Orpheus's singing voice, but also a way just of pushing his own skills and his vocal boundaries.
Yeah, and it was, I believe the question was, where have you been hiding that falsetto this whole time?
Right, yes, exactly. No, it's exactly it. It was good to reference. Now here's where we'll bring in Daisuke Kurosawa. For the original Hades early access release, there's only so many songs released on Spotify, and when the game was fully launched, more songs were added to flesh out and complete the soundtrack. To which we discovered that on one track on the soundtrack, Masahiro Aoki and Daisuke Kurosawa contributed to a song. We'll hear it a bit later in the Critical 5, but Masahiro Aoki, we highlighted him in our talk on Street Fighter V, our episode there. And so Daisuke Kurosawa's name came up, had to do some research into who he was, and oh boy, if that wasn't a surprise. So as we get into the 5 critical tracks, there's going to be some spoilers here and there, mostly of some boss fights, some kind of hidden secrets. It's nothing about the plot, the deeper plot per se. We'll still kind of keep that mum, but there are some neat things that we need to talk about when it comes to certain songs on this soundtrack. And here we go. We'll gush a bit more when it comes to the 5 critical tracks for Hades. We'll start with Out of Tartarus. All right, so your escape attempts start in Tartarus, but you mostly hear this song kind of towards the later tracks in the biome. You're not hearing this necessarily in the first rooms here. And I feel like it's important to highlight this part of the clip specifically. Later in the piece, you hear that hard rock heavy metal version, and like it goes hard and it sounds really good, but I feel like when we're talking about the range of sounds on this soundtrack, it's important to highlight kind of what this acoustic folk version of the song is before we contrast to a harder rock version of a song for the next track. But I mean, this gets you going right away. A simple riff, it's not too complicated, but it gets you going in that battle groove. And you're hearing the different instruments in play with the acoustic guitar, the drums, the percussion. It's getting you right into that battle flow.
I absolutely adore this piece. I don't know what my favorite song in this game is. I just know that there are multiple that could possibly take that. And I think Out of Tartarus is definitely up there. Especially, the acoustic guitar part. I kind of like it better than the hard rock part. Not that the hard rock part is bad. It's still really, really good. But just the feeling that this song sort of gives me. I actually when I was running a tabletop campaign, I actually based one of the scenes off of things that this song specifically made me think of. So it's one of the first songs I listened to before I played the game, back when it was still in early access, and it's still among my favorites.
Yeah, it's foundational for a run, and you're going to hear it a lot, and it's a great piece. But we go into number 2 on the Critical 5, and this is Scourge of the Furies. I mean, my gosh, it's such a good soundtrack. It's so tough to pick a Critical 5, but certain songs stand out. This one technically still also plays in Tartarus, but usually plays more in the boss fights against the Furies, especially when Alecto and Tisiphone show up.
See, I hear it most often with Megara.
Oh, interesting.
I
feel like I saw a long play or something like that where their version, maybe it was like earlier in the game in their run attempts, where the fight against Megara was using that metal version of Out of Tartarus. So I almost wonder like if it kind of evolves to a different track when more Furies are being involved. Interesting. But I mean, this one rules. Then this shows like what that hard rock metal sound can sound like. I love when it kind of drops into like the lower part It's not the main melody, but it's the dun 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 dun. Like, it sounds so good. And yeah, those Fury fights, especially early on, and you're not used to like the big boss fights in this game, they're tough. Meg's tough.
Meg's tough, but Tisiphone is mean. When she like shrinks the battleground, that should be illegal.
Those spinning tops from Electo should be illegal.
Oh yeah, also those two. All three of them are just mean. And if not for the fact that Meg's my type, I'd dislike her. But yeah, this song is just, I think this is, outside of the big one, the most memorable boss fight theme that I hear most often. Again, outside of the one. I listen to this one a lot. It's kind of repetitive, but in like this really, really catchy way. And I think it definitely really picks up with the hard rock part, which plays when you get to the boss, essentially. There's always a mid-boss in an area, and then there is a boss. And both of those get the hard rock version of whatever song has been playing as you've been going. And yeah, this is one of the more memorable ones for me, at the very least.
It's just a straight catchy riff. It's undeniable. Number 3 is where this soundtrack starts to reach special territory. Number 3 is Good Riddance, Eurydice's solo. So you're in Asphodel, the lava world. You're trying to avoid all the magma, and you come across that door with the exclamation point on it. All right, let's check it out. And to the contrast of all of the guitar and the rock and all of that soundtrack that's been pumping throughout the run, suddenly it's a woman singing. And sure enough, it's Ashley Barrett singing, as she tends to do in these Supergiant games with her friendship with Darren Korb. But it's such a wonderful change of pace. And I think this is the moment where I, and a lot of people, I'm sure, when playing the game, is like, oh, no, this music is really special. Like, gotta pay attention more to this soundtrack because it's making me feel things.
I sit in that room for several minutes every time I encounter it, which probably isn't great because you can get certain bonuses and stuff based on how fast you get out. For some reason, the speed at which you get out affects what kind of boons Hermes is willing to throw out, I think.
No kidding, huh?
I'm pretty sure that's what it is, because he'll comment when you got out really fast that time, next time you talk to him. This song is another one of those where it's like, I don't know if it's my favorite because I can't pick a favorite, but it's absolutely up there. It is just a really beautiful song. And like, yeah, among all the lava and stuff of Asphodel, even Zagreus is like, is that singing?
Mm-hmm.
Who would be singing here? And it's just, Eurydice is a very fun character to talk to. Unfortunately, I think her bonuses are the weakest of the three people. Now, I think Patroclus is even weaker because he has one that is very useful but stops being useful once you're good at the game.
Yeah.
And it's really good when you're first starting out and getting through Elysium, but past that, like, you don't need that. But yeah, Eurydice is my favorite NPC to interact with, at least, in terms of when you're out there. Obviously, like, you've got Hypnos and all of the interactions with Hades are so great, but Eurydice is yeah, she's the special one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's get to number 4 on the Critical 5, and it's the one. This is God of the Dead. Yes, this is the final boss battle against Hades. See if you're able to actually escape out to the surface. Had to play the part of the piece for this part that echoes the title screen theme. As we talked about on Best of 2020, what a boss move to, that theme that you hear every time you start up the game. You fire up the game, you open your save file, you hear this theme. And for this final boss piece to start with that and then get into this grungy, slow guitar theme for the first phase of the Hades boss fight, it's just such a killer move. It's so good.
And it's even like synced up with him taking off his cape, and the cape burns out, which is a great joke later on. When you get into his room and you just see his closet's just a bunch of capes because he keeps burning them every time you make it up there.
Oh yeah.
And like he summons his spear, and the fight begins pretty much roughly when the electric guitar comes in, and and then like when we did the Best of 2020, the clip started when the second form of the fight happens, which is also incredible.
Yeah.
Man, so good.
It's done so well. And here is where we have to highlight the piece where Masahiro Aoki and Daisuke Kurosawa contribute to, because there's this track called The Unseen Ones. And, God of the Dead, it includes both parts of the Hades fight, right? Well, this is The Unseen Ones. And you're like, okay, that's the guitar part, the main part of phase 2, but with these face-melting electric guitar solo licks, like, what is this making it even more intense? Found out that there is a third form of the Hades fight. When you toggle the extreme measures difficulty setting before you leave, and you can make the heat even higher. Yeah, if you toggle extreme measures where certain boss fights may have new attacks or things like that. Yeah, it apparently unlocks a third form of the Hades fight, and this is the track that plays. Just so good.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a third form. I don't know if I'll ever see that third form.
I didn't know either. I don't want to see it. I'm perfectly happy with the Hades fight how it is. Maybe
one day, but yeah, this song is, you can clearly tell it's by somebody else and not Darren Korb, because while Korb like shreds pretty hard in some of the songs on the soundtrack, never gets as hard as this.
This is God mode territory. Honestly.
It's like a tier above in terms of like speed metal stuff. It's wow.
It's fantastic. So had to highlight here, especially for Kurosawa's contribution. Let's wrap up the Critical 5 though with number 5. This is In the Blood. And so Darren Korb and Ashley Barrett are singing together as Orpheus and Eurydice. This is the credits theme. When you've beaten Hades for that 10th time, and you're going back down the river Styx, and the story is opening up even more. What a slow jam, but a powerful piece, though, and it just kind of puts a good kind of finality on your experience. You could push on beyond if you want to, but you've hit a big accomplishment by clearing this game 10 times.
So, did you know that this song was actually recorded with a live orchestra at Abbey Road Studios?
Oh, that's fantastic. I feel like I read that Austin Wintory even helped with producing this.
Because I believe they were recording it at the same time they recorded that Supergiant Live album.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because that was also at Abbey Road Studios. I know this because Ashley Barrett on Instagram has posted a few times of like, this time last year we were in Abbey Road Studios recording this, and now I can't leave the house. So yeah, it's that's a very interesting thing for them to do, and they've talked about how like it was just such a cool experience. And yeah, I guess this song in particular was recorded alongside a actual live orchestra.
That is super, super neat. Let's get to some tracks on the cutting room floor. Joe, you have two. Let's hit me with them.
Yeah. My first is Wretched Shades. So you can get this song when talking to Sisyphus is when you get the really like calm version, but the version you hear in the clip is when you open an Infernal Trove, which is a treasure chest that has some goals. They're timed, and you get a better reward the faster you complete what it's asking you to do. And wow, that's when this song becomes awesome. Like, Korb's acoustic guitar skills are on full display in this song. I absolutely adore it. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a real fast tempo, and it brings you right back with Hades kind of putting in a little quip like, "What do you think you're doing?" or something like that, for sure. And yeah, with Sisyphus's chamber, I just think, oh, hello, Prince Zed. it's little things like that when the music's powerful and it kind of creates that mental connection in the game with you. Like that's powerful stuff.
My second song on the cutting room floor is Lament of Orpheus, Underworld mix. So this is a song that Orpheus sometimes sings in the House of Hades. Obviously, this is Darren Korb doing the previously mentioned really good falsetto. You need to purchase it at Orpheus's, stall? I don't know what to even call it. You got to purchase the song from him before you can hear it.
It takes diamonds.
But genuinely, though, this song is so good. It might be my favorite to sing along to, though Good Riddance is still a real close second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're generally going to hear the Lament of Orpheus. The Underworld mix adds the drums that you hear in the clip and all that. That's Underworld mix for sure. I just had a run where I finally got to hear Hymn of Zagreus for the first time.
See, I still haven't heard that in game.
Oh, it's pretty neat. It's like, oh, is that about me? It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really neat what they do with the Orpheus character overall, for sure. My two are definitely more of those, definitely identifiable points in the game. The first of which is The Bloodless. It's the Barge of Death, baby.
Sure is. Big old boat.
So one of these rooms that you can get in Asphodel where you're kind of locked onto this auto-scrolling boat. And you're kind of locked into this tight space with these enemies. Yeah, that dun, 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 da, 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 da. Like, it just takes you right back. And it's like, oh, yep, time for the Barge of Death. And then it shows up when you encounter King Vermin in Styx, where it's just like, oh, it's this tiny little rat who has this huge amount of health and da 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 place. And it's a pretty tough little end mini boss.
I hate all the enemies in Temple of Styx, so
oh my gosh,
I'm biased against them. They're so much of a pain in the ass. Like, not in an unfair way, but oh my god, poison is so annoying.
The satyrs and their poison, oh my gosh, yeah, just the worst. The other one I had to bring up, just had to, is Final Expense. It's the shop theme. You're in Charon's shop. You have a little bit of a breather. Spend your money that you've earned because you don't get to take the Charon's Obol or the gold with you to future runs. So you better spend it wisely while you're still alive. This is just a nice, calm, relaxing breather of a piece. But, the theme is just overall really identifiable with going through Hades runs over and over and over again. I discovered, though, that there is a payback mix on the album, and it has more of a trap beat to this overall calm piece. And so this is for the secret boss fight in the game, because I had not done this yet, so it took some digging to find out. But sometimes on your runs, you may be a little short of money, and you go to Charon's shop, and you see a little bag of cash behind him. And you kind of go near it, and it has, 300 in red. Like, you could borrow 300 money. Well, if you do so, like, a record scratch stops, and, like, you've done a bad thing, and Charon will transport you to a battlefield where you have a boss fight against Charon.
So I knew that this boss fight was in the game, but I've never fought him because literally right after I learned this was a thing, that bag of money has never spawned for me.
Oh, interesting. I feel like it does take like you being short on cash significantly for them to be like, do you want 300 to buy things? Apparently beating Charon gets you a 20% off membership card. Interesting to use at the shop. But then you lose it when you die. So, lol.
Perfect.
What will I never forget about Hades? I liked it last year for sure when I played it, but I've turned into now loving it this year with the more I've played it. I've also loved being able to share the experience with my fiance and how much she loves the game, and like it's a good bonding time for us. Like, come home after a long day, play a Hades run. Like it's really great. And I feel like it's those memories, those connections that I'll treasure most.
For me, I think it is with a bullet the best game Supergiant's ever made.
Oh, for sure.
And that's saying something because they've never made a bad game, in my opinion. Some of their games have problems, like Bastion's gameplay gets a little too repetitive later on. Transistor has some weirdness with its battle system, and then Pyre is way too long. But like, I actually legitimately cannot think of any criticism to give Hades. It's the only game I have given a 10 out of 10. And I did not go into it expecting to do that. But Hades is just such an amazing package from start to finish. Like, we both have said multiple times tonight, like, I don't like roguelikes. I don't like them. I've played them. I sort of like Crypt of the Necrodancer, but I know I'll never beat it. I like Dicey Dungeons, but I know I'll never beat it. I don't really like Binding of Isaac, but Hades, just something about the way that they nailed it is just, it's so good. And I highly recommend anybody with even the slightest interest in the genre or in Greek mythology, throw yourself at Hades, because it's very much worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is it similar to Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town? Well, only in certain scant ways, but they both have really great soundtracks for their time. And great to talk about them both, honestly, and especially for us, both gushing about Hades. So that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at the DeVaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's where Joe's other podcast, Smasherpieces, is hosted. And you can find Smasherpieces and Original Soundchat on podcast services all around the globe, wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, where we have a podcast feed of episodes, but also a Spotify playlist. If we talk about a video game song on this show and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to that big playlist, even when they're put on streaming services after the fact. Joe, what's being added this week from this episode?
So, Harvest Moon is not on Spotify, unsurprisingly. Again, that game never got an official soundtrack release, so unsurprising. But Hades is, and actually the Critical 5 is already on there, but, we can throw on some of the honorable mentions and also probably throw the unseen ones in there too.
Absolutely, for sure. When you're done listening, then you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us, how we're doing, and also some suggestions for games to cover in the future. It's going to be one of our big goals for 2021 is to cover more of those. Keep an eye on when our merch site is open, and we'll keep making some bonus tracks for you. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
Next week is going to be a really, really, really weird episode by design. I will be talking about Tim Fallen.
Oh, yeah. It's our April Fool's episode, isn't it? Well, I'll be talking about Naoki Kodaka. Well, to play us out, I had to give a cover of In the Blood and kind of see what was there on YouTube. I'm sure all the different, metal guitarists that we've covered on the show in the past, Family Jewels, Rashad E.B., I've got a ton of Hades covers, right? It was the hotness to do, right? But, I kind of wanted to reach a little bit out there and find an In the Blood cover. Found one from Julia Henderson featuring Lorenzo de Sequeira. And so I think it sounds really good. That's a great song to cover. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.